Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Aldo Cycling YouTube channel, where today I'm going to be doing a video which I've sort of thought about doing the last few years, which is really to do with going into an in-depth talk about who I'm wanting to pick for my Velogames team and the deliberations that I'm going through with who I'm wanting to pick, just because I always feel that the videos which I make in terms of the guides that I do, the previews for Velogames competitions, I always do quite a surface level, maybe a tiny little bit of a dig into why I think certain riders are good in terms of recent form and stuff. But I really wanted to go into showing you kind of what I'm thinking at the moment. So this is going to be a bit more long form, less edited, and really kind of quite off the cuff, just to try and give you guys a bit of an inclination as to what is kind of going on inside my head in terms of thinking of who I'm wanting to pick. So yeah, this is going to probably include lots of ums and ahs and pauses and stuff, because I'm probably not going to edit this all too much. So the team that I have right now, I'm quite happy with it, but there's still some things which I don't like. So far, there are some riders which are kind of locked in, which is Remco's pretty locked in. I'd say that Kemna's pretty locked in. And I'd say that Paddy Pentler is pretty locked in. So there's not a lot of guys who I'm like particularly certain about. What I like about this team right now is that it's got Pedersen in there, which is a big thing because Pedersen is probably the fastest sprinter in this race and he's probably going to win multiple stages. You know, not picking Pedersen for me seems like you're basically saying, well, this guy is pretty much guaranteed to get sprint victories. Like, let's face it, he is, because he's got a good lead out and he's probably the fastest sprinter here, arguably. And he's also really good at more versatile terrain. So even something like when you look at, so I've got the stage profiles up. So something like stage 3, could Pedersen survive that? Maybe. You know, Pedersen in reality is going to take what? Like stages that he could compete in. Stage 2, maybe stage 3, stage 5, stage 6, stage 10, maybe stage 11, stage 14, stage 17, and stage 21. So that's like 9 stages that Pedersen could compete in. Of those, there were a couple which could be a breakaway stage, but I still think that's like 7 stages which Pedersen could compete in. When you look back to, like, if you look at Velogames Italy 2022, right, so this is where Demar did really well. Demar cost 10 credits last year in the Giro, and when you look at the rider standings, you see that he's in 3rd place. And he got 1,400 points, just over, from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sprints. So let's say that Pedersen is going to compete in a roughly similar number of sprints, maybe a little bit more. Could he get more than 1,400 points? Yes. The reason why I think 1,400 is important is because usually you find when you get to like the team standings and stuff, so the best teams are getting over 10,000 points, which means that they're getting roughly, like, this is what, like top 100 probably are getting over 10,000 points. That means that per rider credit they're getting 100 points, because it's 100 times 100, which is 10,000. So I mean, let's just take a look back at my team from last year. My team from last year was actually pretty mega. If Binny didn't DNF and if Zhao didn't DNF, whoa, I tell you, this would have been a slapping team. But that's not what happened. But my point is that you want to be trying to get 100 points per rider credit. So Leonard Kemna, who's 10 credits, I want him to be getting 1,000. That's kind of the yardstick which I use when I'm deciding who to try and put on my team. Do I think that Mads Pedersen can get 1,400 credits? If he can compete in 7 stages, and he, when you look at the scoring system, he on average finishes in 3rd place, let's say. So let's pull up the calculator. This is literally what I do. And I just wanted to give you guys an insight into this. So like 160 times that by 7, he gets 1,100 1,120. Plus on to the end of that, the end of tour points. Well, let's say that he's probably going to win Chiclamina, yeah? So add 120 onto there, equals that. And then there's also the not assist points, the kind of daily points. So daily points, so he gets 12 for leading. And let's say he leads, let's be pessimistic. Let's say that he leads for like 10 stages, so that's another 120. That equals 1,360. And maybe he gets in a couple of breaks and it's worth 20 per break. So yeah, it's pretty realistic that Pedersen can get to 1,400, I think. So, which is why I think he's a good choice. The alternative for me is that what I don't have here is Roglic. I know that in my previews and stuff I've kind of slated Roglic a little bit in terms of his ability to actually finish a Grand Tour. And that's just because I picked Roglic in the Tour de France last year and he DNF'd. And I picked him in the Tour de France before that and he DNF'd that. So I've got a little bit of a hate relationship with Roglic. When it comes to the Tour though, could be different at the Giro. So I am wondering whether to try and get Roglic onto the team as well. At the end of the day, that would give you the two favourites, and therefore you'd be pretty hard pressed to not pick the winner. The thing is, I would have to take Pedersen off, and my deliberation is really, can Caden Groves compete with Pedersen's points? Could Groves get, Groves I consider to be fairly similar to Mats Pedersen in terms of climbing ability. I don't think that's too outrageous to say. I think that Groves has beaten Pedersen in sprints in the past. Think back to the Vuelta last year. He kind of sometimes finished ahead of Pedersen, and I think that's a pretty good sign. Also, Groves has a whole team around him as well as a lead out. It's not like an Ackermann or a Gaviria where it's kind of like 50-50 split in the team. So I really like Groves, but it's kind of, is he going to do well enough? The alternative is then, do I take a 6-pointer off like Healy and put on, say, Will Barter? Will Barter seems to be pretty much the most picked 4-point rider. I reckon he's going to be like 20% selected or something like that. So as Will Barter, or I don't go with Will Barter, I instead change Mollema down to a 6-credit rider, which could be a whole load of people. I've seen a lot of people talk about Ballerini actually, which isn't actually that bad of a shout, because if he sprints and gets the assist points on Remco, he could get 600, 700 points, I reckon. Like we were saying, if they finish, if he finishes, top 5 in a couple of sprints, that's like 250, plus like 100 odd points for Remco, that's 350, maybe some other sprints as well. Maybe he gets like 500 realistically then. So that's not that bad. There aren't, the thing is, the 6-pointers, there aren't that many great ones in the climber category. I know I said this in my preview, but there just aren't. There's Jefferson Cepeda, who EF haven't fully released their start list, so be sure to take that with a grain of salt before you go picking him. Tarame as well is very interesting, but he usually does well in like the first week. Think back to, what was it? I know he's taken like red jerseys and stuff in the Vuelta, but last year in the Giro up Etna, he was spat pretty bad by Kemna. And that's kind of my deliberation. I feel like I would more than likely take off Healy and put on Barter, just because I think they're a similar sort of rider where they can both climb, they can both time trial. I also have some queries about Healy because he's a Grand Tour debutant, and I know we've had debutants do really well in the past, but those are guys like Remco and Pogacar and, just insane talents like that. Not saying that Ben Healy's not, but I'm just worried that we're all going to get caught up in the hype of Ben Healy doing well in the Ardennes and then just be like, whatever, like, yeah, he's going to do really well in the Grand Tour because he's done well in the Ardennes, whereas the two don't really correlate because it's a one-day race versus a week, like 3-week race. Just checking that's recording. Yeah, it is. So that's kind of my deliberation with Healy. He could be a good one. Like, he could be outstanding, let's face it. He is a really good time trialist, so, is he going to do well on that opening TT? Is he going to top 10 that? Yeah, probably. Is he then going to top 10 the stage 9 TT? Probably, yeah. When you consider that the time trialers who are better than him, and let's count them out. So we've got Remco will probably beat him. Kemner will probably beat him. G will probably beat him. A Rensman. Maybe a Rensman. Ganna will do. Roglic might. Dennis might. Who else might beat him? Almeida might. McNulty might. Vine might. So he's kind of fringing on the top 10. Mollema as well. So he's kind of thereabouts with the TTs. Is he going to be allowed to go into the breaks? You'd think yes. I know EF have 10 riders here, which is currently, illegal. It's not allowed, but that'll get brought down to 8. Healy's a cool one, but you have to think about what stages is he going to do well in where somebody like Magnus Cort Nielsen isn't. Or he won't be working for Iran or Carthy or whoever their GC leader is, Like, where's Healy's freedom coming from in this race? As a Grand Tour debutant, is he going to have expectations to do well in this race? Maybe not, to be honest with you. I know he's in a contract year, which is important, but let's face it, he has already, if his season ended right now, this minute, he didn't start with Giro, he breaks his tibia, whatever, doesn't compete for the rest of the season, he would get a contract because he has been outstanding this season. Therefore, does he have pressure on himself to get good results in this Giro? No, not really. He's 22 and he's finished 4th in Liège, 2nd at Amstel and 2nd at Brabant-Sipel. Like, he doesn't really need to do well in this race, which sounds kind of bad and kind of like negative thinking, but I'm just wanting us to really comprehend that just because Healy's done well so far this year doesn't mean that he might be the best Velogames pick. He might not really do too much, and I just want us to really think about, is he the best 6-point rider to be picking? I've said, speaking of 6-point riders that I think are good, I put my name next to Aurélien Palipenta and I said that he is the best. And I still stick by that, I think. Because when you look at AG2R, right, who are their deadly riders? It's Van Dlam and Palipenta. They've got Charel, Baudin, freaking Valentin, Palipenta, Prudhomme, Warbass, maybe, but Warbass hasn't really done that much this year either. Is that just because he's been a domestique? I don't know. But Palipenta, 18th at Liège. I know he wasn't that great at Tour of the Alps, but Tour of the Alps isn't necessarily the strongest correlation to the Giro. We've seen that many times in the past. The winners of the Tour of the Alps do not always tend to do well. Think Volta is a great example from last year, right? We'll look at this team. Last year, I had Volta on my team. He got 262 points. If we go and look at how Volta was doing last year, of course, where is he? Those of you who picked him will know what I'm talking about here when I say that Volta had so much hype around him as a Velogames guy going into the Giro last year, because beforehand he had finished 4th at Stradì. He'd had a good result into Barcelona and Catalonia, and he'd finished 5th at the Tour of the Alps in GC. And then we all saw that Volta was a 6-credit unclassified rider, and he was so heavily selected. In fact, let's go have a look. Let's go have a look at unclassified selected. Highest was Mathieu van der Poel. Look, Volta, highest selected 6-point rider at over 20%, and he got 262 points. The best unclassified riders who are 6 points. So with Juanpe, there's Gaetan van Leemreize, but then you've got Consonni, and there's Edward Turns in there as well. So the sprinters are actually a pretty safe choice to be going with, because the unclassified guys, when they're climbers, you know, sometimes they can do really well, like a Juanpe, but sometimes they can fall a bit flat on their face, like Volta. So I really like Parapentel though. Going back to him, kind of once I've gone off on my tangent. Parapentel I like because 18th at Liège, he was alright at Tour of the Alps, 11th in Paris-Nice, but you have to remember at the Col de la Quiole, he overlapped wheels with somebody and crashed. So really, like, would he have gained like 30 seconds on GC, let's say, because of that crash? And you know, I think his chain fell off and stuff like that. Would he have finished inside the top 10 of Paris-Nice with that? Actually, no, he wouldn't have done. But still, the point remains: 11th place at GC at Paris-Nice is a good result. And he also finished second in GC at Tour of the Alps Maritime du Var. And I just think that he's the most dangerous rider that AG2R have. I know he might go for GC, but honestly, let's go back to, when was it? Was it the Tour? 15th in GC at the Tour a couple of years ago, where he finished, you know, 7th on one stage, 10th on another, and then he finished 15th. Let's take that and figure out the points for that. If he finished, what was it? 7th, 10th, and 15th overall. 7th and 10th would get you 155, and then 15th, so that's 250 points. And that's as like a worst case scenario, which I think is not too bad. I know I said earlier that you're kind of wanting to look for sort of 100 points per credit, but I think Parapentel is just looking a bit different this year. You know, when he did that performance at the Tour, that was after kind of not the greatest year. Like, it was good, but it wasn't the greatest. And I just think that Parapentel has got better over the years, and I think that he could just do something in this race, you know. Speaking of like the sprinters, you know, there's Bonifacio in here, and then I think the other one, I've looked down and I've tried to look for sprinters, because based upon Edward Turns and Consoni last year, they could be a really safe way of just getting points. I honestly think that Jake Stewart is somebody who people might be sleeping on. There's Tivani, but you also have to remember that there's this guy, Dale Valle, and then there's also Attilio Viviani. So I don't know who they're sprinting for, but Jake Stewart, he has had a not very good season, to be honest with you. His season has not been good this year. I remember he DNF'd a race early on. I can't remember which one it was. Was it KBK? It might have been E3. I can't remember. He chipped his tooth or something like that. But go back to 2022 when he was going to the Vuelta. You know, he finished 8th and 7th in 2 sprints, and then 12th in another one, which was the Breakaway by Soler. But you know, if we're saying that Pedersen's going to compete in 6 sprints, you know, maybe Jake Stewart competes in 5. Let's say on average he picks up 8th place in 5 sprints, let's say. I think that's fairly realistic considering that the sprint field here is pretty dire. So that'll be 80 times 5, so that'll get you 400 points. Versus when I was talking about Parapentel and he was getting like 250. And I feel like the sprinters are a little bit boring. I know that they don't get in the breakaway, and it's kind of cool when you guys in the break and it's like, oh, they're going to contest for the stage victory or not, and you get excited in the hype. But in terms of pure point scoring capabilities, the sprinters are a good way to go, because there aren't that many in terms of guys who are going for the breakaway versus guys who are sprinters. There are so many more guys fighting it for every single like breakaway, and it's so like lottery luck based if you guys in there or not. Versus the sprinters, it's just like these are the sprint stages, these are going to be the sprinters, and yeah, it's a bit lucky if they get shuffled out of position or not, but on more frequently than not they will get you a top 10, which is why I quite like the Bonifacio and Stewart approach. Possibly the only thing with Bonifacio is that there's also Arnie Mari here, who is in the sprinter classification part, and he's, you know, he did good in some sprints at Paris-Nice and Catalonia and Oman, so it's hard to say whether they're going to be going for Arnie Mari or not. Bonifacio, I know he won a stage at Giro de Sicilia, but I don't know. It's hard to say whether that's, for crying out loud. When Bonifacio won this sprint, Caruso finished in 5th place. For goodness sake. That's not the kind of confirmation that I'm needing. I think that Stewart's actually a really good 6-pointer, to be honest with you. He got quite a few points at Velogames Spain last year. If I pull up Velogames Spain 2022, and we're going to go try find Stewart, and how many points he got by basically doing, what was it, a couple of top 10s and a 12th place or something like that. So let's go have a look at cost 6 unclassified points. Stewart got 314 points by contesting a few stages, which is pretty good considering that he DNF'd and then didn't compete in quite a few stages after that where there were pure sprints. So I think that Stewart, although he hasn't looked so good this year, you don't need mega form to get through sprint stages and then sprint. Let's face it, you don't. Because, you need to be in good position. And actually, Groupama do not have that bad of a lead-out train. They've got Amaral, Kung, Leinhardt, Konovalos. Wait, is that right? Konovalos, blah, 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 blah. And Lars Vandenberg, right? They've got rulers here. And nobody seems to be pointing out that the guy who's going to be on the end of this is Jake Stewart. Because why else would they bring all these rouleurs to this race if they're not going to be doing something with them? They're not just going to be like slogging them up mountains all the time. Stewart is going to be the guy on the end of this. And I think that people are sleeping on it. And I'm hoping that you guys watching this video might, I don't know. I don't want to say wake up to it because it makes it seem like you're being lazy or something. I want you to see what I'm seeing, basically. That's why I'm making this video. Battistella, I tell you, last year I had a good feeling about Battistella at Velogames Spain, and I didn't put him on, and that really irks me that I didn't do that. I mean, the point which I made in the video, which was that there aren't that many stages which suit the like the punchers, like Lorenzo Rota or something like that. So let's go, so say, you guys like Bettiol and Lorenzo Rota and Simon Clark, and I'm just going to pick out some other ones as well, just to kind of really nail home my point. Rota, Luis Leon Sanchez, Scaroni, Velasco is another good example of that. Tesfacion as well, possibly Scoins. How many stages are there which I'm like, those guys, those puncher types, they're going to be the ones? Stage 3 is definitely one of them. Honestly, I don't think stage 4, that finish is too hard, I think, for them, to be honest with you. Maybe stage 8. They could maybe do something here. Stage 7, if it's a break, I'll throw it in there. This one, stage 11. Maybe that one, stage 12. I think that's too hard, to be honest. I think that's pure, that's more like mountain stage. Look at the elevation. I mean, look at the distance and the freaking average gradient. I don't think, I'm not looking at this stage and thinking, who's winning that? Bettiol, that's who. I know that might be a little bit insulting to Bettiol, but I'm not thinking, Samuele Battistella, he's winning this stage, I'm seeing this and I'm thinking Mollema's going to win that, or something like that, And then the rest of them don't really suit. So I'm saying like 5 stages maybe suit those guys. And I just don't think that that's 5 stages where Bettiol might do well. If he gets him a break and he does well, that's not a guaranteed top 10 every time. Versus Stewart has 5 sprints where he's more than likely going to finish inside the top 10. It's not the most glamorous. It's not the most glamorous top 10s. And I know there's this thing but a top 10 is worth a top 10. It's not worth more because it was won in more spectacular fashion. Okay? And I feel like I've been guilty of this in the past where I tried to pick cool riders who I've kind of, in the crystal ball in my mind, I'm like mega minding it, trying to see into the future or something. Like, sometimes it's just better to be, and actually, I've tried to be a bit more like this. Sometimes it's just better just to be a bit of a basic bitch and just kind of pick the really boring riders because they generally do quite well. Anyway, going back, so I've kind of gone through the unclassifieds, I think. Ganna, honestly, don't pick Ganna. I know that you want to, because he's going to win the TTs. But if the tour last year taught us anything, and from my logic, Ganna needs to get 1,000 points. And he's not going to get 1,000 points, okay? Because this isn't Ganna from the freaking Giro where he was worth 6 credits and he got like 1,000 points there where everybody like picked him. You know, Ganna is going to do well in the TTs, then he's going to be a domestique. He's going to get maximum 500 points, and that's not worth it, so don't pick Ganna. Court, I can understand the hype around Court, but to be honest with you, he was not sprinting that great at Romandy. I had him on my team as well there. His time trialling isn't going to be good enough to probably be competing inside the top 10s because, and I hate to say this, we are all still living in the 2021 Vuelta where Magnus Cort Nielsen got an absolute shit ton of points. Because we are. Look back, like this year, I know that Magnus Cort Nielsen, he is good. Like, don't get me wrong, he is good. But is there too much hype? I know he got on the break loads in the tour, and like, yeah, he is worth it. I think like he'll get you like 600 points or so. You know, Vuelta, Giro last year, he got a few top 10s and stuff, like a 4th, a 3rd, a 7th. Like, he is quite worth it. But I think everybody is thinking about this Vuelta, right? Where he was third, first, second, and he was 6 credits. I think that's what we're all still thinking about, and I think everybody's thinking that that's going to repeat itself in this year, but I just don't think it will, to be honest with you. I'm not convinced. I think Magnus Cort Nielsen, of the 8 credit riders, is he the best one? He is good, to be honest with you. He is. But I can never really bring myself to put on an 8 credit unclassified. I don't know why. I just can't. Not anymore. Kung as well. Like, Kung will do well in the TTs like Ganna, so he's a little bit cheaper. He will get in the breaks probably a bit more, considering that their only climbing guys for the break are what, like Pinot, pretty much, and Millard. I think Kung's good enough at climbing that he'll get in the breaks as well. I think that, you know, if I had to pick Kung or Court, I'm picking Court, despite the fact that Kung, the TT, will come in big at the start. He'll get assists, he'll get GC points from the get-go, and I think that's really handy. And we'll get on to something else about that in a little bit. Is Victor Lafay not doing this race anymore? He's not. Well, that makes my life a hell of a lot easier, to be honest with you. I'm really hard to see that makes my life easier. Millard, I put Millard on it as well to last year, and he really just kind of didn't do anything, so I'm not going to pick him here. Rota, yeah, maybe. Schcoin, Stewart. Tesfazion is an interesting one, but are there any stages where Tesfazion's going to do something where Pedersen isn't? And the answer is probably no. So probably don't pick Tesfazion. Tratnik's an interesting one. With Roglic and Jumbo actually not looking that strong, Tratnik could get him a break quite a bit. So I think that Tratnik could be a sneaky one. And then 4-point riders, I still think that Barta's the best one. And then, honestly, man, like, it's hard. You could go Kirsch. I did see a good argument saying that Kirsch will get assist points for Pedersen, and then he might finish top 15 in some sprints because he's the lead-out man. Very sound logic. I like that. Kind of similar to how Morkuv in 2021, when he was leading out Cav, he was 4 credits there. Do you remember that? And he got like 350 points or something like that. I think Kirsch could do something like that. So Kirsch, I think, yeah, good shout out for Kirsch in the comments section. That is quite a good one. But yeah, outside of that, Pitilli. I think back to Pitilli. Do you remember when he finished top 10 in Strade? Because that happened in 2022. He finished top 10 in Strade. Where is it? There he is. Top 10 in Strade last year. I know it's not like the biggest thing, but I don't know. For some reason, I just have way more hype over Pitilli than is completely necessary. I think I always just keep... Look, he's finished top 10 in the Giro stage. I was thinking to this Final 2000 stage in the 2021 Tour of Normandy where he was in the break, and I keep on thinking back to that and really overhyping him. Whereas actually he's probably not that great of a pick, so probably don't pick Patilli. Yeah, you could go with assist points for like a Puccio or a Seri, or I don't know. Is Otto Vegard going to be the lead out man? I don't really know for Pedersen. Yeah, so you could go assist points. I say that Seri's probably better than Puccio, to be honest with you, in terms of likelihood of getting points. I think Attilio Viviani is a good one, to be honest, as a 4-point rider. I know that I saw somebody with a comment section saying that we wanted another 4-point rider. Well, if Kirsch isn't good enough, probably Attilio Viviani. I know this guy, you know, he's a pretty like C-tier sprinter, but of San Juan he did finish 10th, 12th, 5th and 6th in sprints, which is no mean feat. On a pure flat, dead, non-technical whatever sprint, he could do alright, but there are other guys for Korotech, so I'd probably say choose Barta, and then outside of Barta, I don't know, dude, go for assist points, go for Seri, go for Puccio, keep it safe, keep it basic, don't try to do anything too spectacular. I want to talk a little bit about sprinters. Pedersen and Groves have of course talked about. I think that both of those are good choices. I think they're my favourites. Ackerman, I'm not touching. Gaviria, I think he'll win a stage or two, to be honest with you, but he, like, a lot of these sprinters might not make it to the end, because I watched, as I'm sure a lot of you guys probably have, I watched Lanterne Rouge's preview of a Giro, and yeah, they were like, are they going to make it to Rome? Are they going to make it up here? And it's like, that's actually a really good point, because if they don't make it up here into Rome, right, if they're OTL, or they just crack in this final week, right, in these last two stages, you don't get the Ciclamina points at the end, which is a pretty big deal when that's like an extra bonus, like anywhere from sort of 50 up to 120. So I think that Matthews is a safe one. I think Consonni is a good one as well. He'll probably finish as well. Milan will probably finish. Ballerini's pretty sneaky. So yeah, those are the best ones. Pedersen, Matthews, Consonni, Groves, Milan maybe, Ballerini, and maybe Albanese. But he won't contest that for bunch sprints very amazingly. He'll be more in the breaks. And then, yeah, so my dilemma is basically, what I like about Remco and Roglic is that they'll do well in the TT, and then because of the consequence of that, they'll get GC points just coming in, just from the get-go, unless they let the jersey go, which is very likely. So I think that those two are really good choices, but Almeida at 16 is good, I think, because he could get... he got like just under 1,000 last year, and he DNF, so he was really gonna get like 1,400, which is very close to my 100 points per credit kind of bar that I've set for riders. So I think that Almeida is good. Roglic is good because he will probably lose a bit of ground to Remco in the TTs, and therefore be forced to make up ground in the, like, just through bonus seconds and stuff like that. And I think that Roglic is so good at the sprints between GC riders, so I think that Roglic, he is a very good one to be going with. Honestly, I'm not going with G. I'm not going with Vlasov. They don't look great. Arensman and Sivakov, probably not. But if they're allowed off the leash in the final weeks, Sivakov, I think it could be deadly. I think McNulty could be really strong, but I'm not risking 10 credits on McNulty on a hunch that I think he's going to do well. That's just not the way to go. Mollema I like just because he did well for me last year, and I think he'll do the same again this year. So I think that Remco and Roglic just great choices because they're going to get those TT points at the start, and then they're going to get assist points. Similarly, that's why I like Kemna, because Kemna did a great TT at Tirreno this year, where he finished second behind Ganna, and even if he finishes like 8th or something like that, he's still going to get like assist points every few days. Is he, because he's wanting to go for GC, right? But he just missed out on the Maya Rosa last year. Is that going to be something which he's wanting to do? Is he going to try get him a break and get like that Maya Rosa and then hold on to it for as long as possible, kind of like how Zhao did? And then, like, Kemna's not that slow in a finish either. And I think that he's just so good at the Giro as Kemner, which is why I'm just putting him on. I'd prefer it if he was 8 credits, but I understand that he's 10 because he did so good last year. Teo's probably like just a very sound one to be going with, to be honest with you. He'll probably get somewhere like 1,300 credits or points. I'm getting so confused. I think Mateo is good. The Bahrain guys, they deserve their own discussion. Hey, Caruso, Boitlago, honestly, I don't know what to make of this because they could all do well. I'm liking Boitlago. You can see this because I've got him on my team right now. I like Boitlago because he's a little bit under the radar. His TT, honestly, isn't that bad in comparison. I remember, when I saw Lantern Rouge's thing yesterday, they were talking about how Caruso's TT's good. I'm not sure that's just because of the Romandy one, but when you look back to Torreno, right, this individual time trial, who do you think finished higher out of Caruso and Boitlago in this 11.5k flat TT? The answer is that it was Boitlago. Right, so my SD card ran out of space because I was talking for that long, so I'm going to try and round this up because this is now like over 30 minutes or so. I know I was talking about Bahrain. I was saying how I think that Boitlago could be a bit of a sneaky GC threat, but it's a bit risky because Bahrain, because they've got so many GC options, you don't know if one of them's going to start being like a domestique or whatever. So like Boitlago could be really good. He could be, I think, like 1,000+ points. Honestly, I think that he could get that good. I think he could be top 5 maybe if things really go right, just because he's just really under the radar. And I just think that he could just sneak up there. Like, people are talking about how, we're talking about Evenepoel, Roglic, Zhao, and Teo. But is it relatively open outside of that? Like, yeah, it is. And could somebody like a Boitlago finish in 5th place? Like, yeah, I think they absolutely could do. And you also have to remember that in previous Grand Tours, think back to when Caruso finished 2nd in the Giro, think back to Jai last year in the Vuelta, think back to Jai at the Giro last year, Mas at the Vuelta last year. These guys were like 8 credits or 12 credits. So these cheap riders can sometimes launch a bit of a surprise. And I think that Boitlago could be that guy. I'm also tempted by Fortunato because he will definitely be more getting in the breakaways. I think he'll try to finish top 10 in GC as well, but I just prefer Boitlago just because he finished 3rd at Liège, which is like a really good result that I think people are forgetting about. So I don't know. I'm kind of high on Boitlago. Maybe I'm just trying to persuade myself as to why my decision is good, but I'm not tempted. Other than Fortunato, I'm not tempted by the other 8-point riders. And the 6s just aren't that great either. Yeah, like I said, like Cepeda maybe. But I just don't think they're that great for some reason. I just don't really feel it. Vine, UAE say that he's going to maybe have his own chances or whatever. I just don't know, man. I always prefer to have the race results to really back it up, and I just haven't seen Vine in such a long time. It's very possible he's selected by like 5% of people, and those 5% of people really reap the benefits because barely anybody chooses him. But we'll wait and see how that pans out. So to try and wrap this up, this is the team. I'm between 2 teams. This is the first team on screen. I'll just give you a second to kind of rake it in. Of course, I'm also tempted, Mollema might not be the best 8-point rider. I was talking about the sprinters and stuff. Should I put Consonni on over Mollema? As far as I could, my thinking is that Consonni will get something like 800 points or 700 points. Mollema, I think, has a maximum ceiling higher. I think that Mollema could get 1,000, but his chances of hitting 1,000 are probably lower. So it's kind of the risk-reward of that. Other 8-point riders, I've already got Boitlago on there. Do I prefer Mollema or Magnus Cort Nielsen? Mollema's a better time trialist. Mollema's a better climber. And there's also fewer people in Trek who are going to be getting breakaways. So I'd probably prefer Mollema over Cort. I'd prefer Mollema over Fortunato because he's better at time trialing. And he'll get him a breakaway probably sooner than Fortunato will. And he's also more able to get him a breakaway because he's more of a TT engine. I've already got Groves in. he's probably better than Kung because he's probably a slightly worse time trialist. But again, Mollema will get him the breakaways. And then Iran, maybe. I think Iran will finish probably like 10th in GC. But like, I think that he'll probably get there for something near 700 points. But I think that Mollema could get near 1,000. Kind of similar to last year. The alternative option is that I go with Zhao. I then get upgrade Groves to Pedersen. And then instead of Barter, I could have another 6-point rider. Whoever I want that to be. I think it's hard to say, like Healy maybe, but I was talking about Healy earlier and all my concerns about him. So honestly, then I'm kind of like, you know, who would I put on? Depluce, Dombrowski, Dunbar. Jake were talking big game about Dunbar doing GC, but he's going to drop time in the time trial, so he's going to have to try and go into the break right, which is kind of a tempting option. I think that Dunbar's been promising quite a lot for quite a few years, so it might be good to put him on. And then, like, I don't really know. Riccatello? I'm trying to pick more of like a climbing type to really go in the break. Tratnik maybe. Or I could upgrade Mollema or Boitlago up to a 10, which would be either Caruso, I think, maybe Pino, Carthy, whatever. But are they better than Boitlago? I don't know. Or, you know, I could put in the wild card and pick anyone, but that doesn't really make my options that much better. I can get Matthews in, who I think Matthews could be an okay one. You know, what's going to be better? Is it going to be a 10-point rider and Will Barter, or is it going to be Mollema and a 6? Depends on what Barter does. To be honest, I think that Barter could be. He is the quality of a 6-credit rider. I think he is maybe he is deserving to be in a 6-credit position. But you know, so are these 6-point riders categorically better than Barter? Not necessarily, considering how Barter was looking at Romandy. So would it be better to upgrade Mollema to somebody a bit more certain, like a Matthews? Possibly. Or somebody who's more certain to be going for GC, like Caruso or Carthy or something like that. That might be the case, but I don't know. I feel like because Mollema did good for me last year, maybe I'm feeling sentimental towards that pick. And maybe I'm thinking that I want to keep him on because he did well for me last year and I'm being blinded and maybe he'll just really let me down this year. So maybe I could go with, you know, Matthews, something like that. So then I'd have Remco, Almeida. But I don't really like my GC options here, you see. Like, it's just too light on the ground. But that's kind of my thinking so far. Of course, this has been probably one of my longest videos ever. So, but I just wanted to let you guys know, you know, what I'm thinking in terms of my deep dive analysis as to why I'm thinking what I'm thinking, rather than just doing quite surface level stuff and just saying opinions without really backing them up too much. So let me know if you like this kind of thing. If you are still here, you know, maybe I'll do it again for the Tour and the Vuelta. I'll probably only do it for the Grand Tours. And yeah, all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you for tomorrow's video where I'm going to reveal who I'm going to be selecting for my team. Salut!